We've reached a turning point in our series. The 2020s are still in motion, so we won't be moving forward in time in today's video. But instead, we're going to be going back 100 years in cinema. 100 years when fear was first filmed on celluloid. Nightmares to Prince, the first adaptations of Gothic literature. The birth of Gothic horror in cinema. In today's video, we'll look at the films that best fit the genre for Gothic horror in cinema. So now it's time for the 1910s to show us their best Gothic horror films. We start this list with a box office flop from 1910. Was it really a failure, or perhaps not appreciated for its artistry? The very first film adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The young doctor discovers the secret of life, which he uses to create a perfect human, but the question eventually arises if the monster truly exists, or is just a reflection of its creator. Thomas Edison's Frankenstein was the first adaptation of Mary Shelley's famous novel. A liberal adaptation nonetheless, as trying to translate the 1818 text to a 60-minute reel will come with cutting away a lot of the story. But this adaptation does keep the spirit of Shelley's tale alive. I personally feel like this adaptation, though, mixes a little bit of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. More on that one later. Both stories share a very similar storytelling trope of the creators coming face to face with their shadowy selves through their own creation. Throughout the majority of the film, the monster is only seen when Frankenstein is on screen, with the exception to one scene when Elizabeth sees the monster off screen. But we can assume at this point that maybe Elizabeth has finally seen Frankenstein for who he truly is. If only he was in the room with her, that is. This film kinda loses inconsistency, but work with me here. Lastly, the creature is not created from the typical science that what we're used to in adaptation, but instead feels more like a creation of magic. Frankenstein throws in a few ingredients into a cauldron that sits inside a giant oven to make his monster. The process is slow but feels mythic. Never have I seen a Frankenstein monster made this way in cinema. If you're looking for a film that leaves a lasting impact through its visuals, L'Inferno should be on your list. This loose adaptation of the first part of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, Inferno chronicles Dante's travel through the circles of hell, guided by the poet Virgil. While in America, films were ranging somewhere between 8 to 20 minutes in length, slowly escaping the novelty that has been branded on American cinema at that time. Italy and the rest of Europe, on the other hand, were branching off into feature film territory. L'Inferno is Italy's first full-length feature film with 3 directors at the helm: Francesco Bertolini, Adolfo Padovan, and Giuseppe Dell'Aguado. What has L'Inferno make our list, you ask? While the story is very chopped up in this adaptation of the Divine Comedies, this is a film that you don't go for story, but mainly for visuals. The set design has your eye wandering along with the characters on this beautifully haunted landscape. It's a fantastical nightmare. If this image of Lucifer does not disturb you in some way, then I don't know what will. For the longest time, Inferno was really hard to find a good print for. Mostly being terrible, but thankfully with its rediscovery, we now have cleaner prints of this iconic film with interesting redesigns to the film's soundtrack. I mean, listen to this one and tell me in the comments, how does this make you feel? This is the only existing early adaptation of the classic novella, with the first 5 adaptations between 1908 and 1910 lost. Dr. Jekyll ingests the vial of unknown substance that activates his primal side, Mr. Hyde, in this 12-minute one-reeler. Why is this film essential? Much like Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde adapt ideas and concepts from the novel that it's based on. While it doesn't woo modern audiences, a lot can be seen in this film with the early works of how the horror film was being constructed. We have a narrative that attempts to tell a story about a shadowy archetype, but with the filmmakers trying to develop the film language, they're left with nothing more but to experiment. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is only viewing essential to see where filmmakers have expanded upon 8 years from now, when we would get a definitive adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's novella with John Barrymore as the lead. A poor student, Baldwin, sells his mirror image to a satanic sorcerer, Scapinelli. He falls in love with the Countess and tries to win her over, but his mirror image receives a life of its own and sabotages Baldwin's every move. Stellan Rise, the Student of Prague, reminds us all how far ahead Europe was in cinema. While America was still figuring out the film language, Europe had it made, for the most part. This silent melodrama Gothic horror loosely adapts several key pieces of literature: Edgar Allan Poe's short story William Wilson, Alfred de Musset's poem The December Night, and the tragic play Faust by Goethe. I do have to be honest with you guys here for a moment. Rewatching The Student of Prague years later after discovering this film for myself, it reminds me just because Europe was ahead of us with understanding the film language, didn't mean that this translated well for everyone. There were moments in its runtime I did check to see how much longer I had of the movie. A lot of silent films at this time, while experimenting with longer storytelling, started out with great pacing before you feel like they're meandering through the plot, leading to a great ending. This is still early formation of cinema as we speak, so we're more lenient here with pacing, editing, etc., etc. Unless you're a casual moviegoer, then these films will not pique your interest whatsoever. The Student of Prague would be remade 13 years later, this time part of the German expressionistic movement that came after the end of the First World War. That's when I feel like this story gets its legs and does better with the source material. This film is an example on how you can break a few eggs before making a classic, even if that classic is a remake. Before we get to our final film, here are the runner-ups on our list. It's been a while since we covered a horror anthology on this series, so why not the first horror anthology in cinema? 5 tales of terror revolve around a missing wife, a deadly roll of the dice, a murder with a guilty conscience, an unaliving club, and a haunted house. Why is this film an essential viewing? If this video wasn't niche enough already, it's about to get nicher? Niche? Anyway, moving along. If you're a fan of horror anthologies like Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror, or even Black Sabbath, as I had made mention from our Gothic horror films of the 60s, check that out if you haven't seen it, then this is the crown jewel in your horror search. The film's 5 horror segments are mostly based on classic literature. Nothing really new here, as most films at the time and onward adapted from novel and short stories. Much like The Student of Prague on this list, Eerie Tales struggles with its pacing, so I wouldn't be shocked if you skip segments or just watch this film in pieces. It's a little hard to watch, and after sitting through the other 4 films on this list, I needed a break. I was winded. You can only focus on something for so long before you just start screaming out into the void. But I can't really blame the film for that. I think a lot of that has to do with how we view content, media, and art in today's society. I'm a devout lover for silent cinema, even when it challenges my attention span. And this may sound like I'm saying watching these movies is a struggle or is hard or a challenge. I assure you, I'm not. Just take a break in between each viewing of these films. Get up, stretch your legs, go think about what you just watched before you watch another one. What did you think of our picks? Did any of your favorites make the list? If not, share your list down in the comments below of the best Gothic horror films of the 1910s. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to see more of our videos. And hey, join our YouTube membership and be a film student and get our videos early. Thank you for watching.